Hey guys, Courtney Adams with Gather with Purpose podcast here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you are ready to dig in, fill up, and get going. So let's just jump right in here. We are going to chat about the idea of clarification often requires removal. So I am currently doing a Bible study, and one of the verses that was presented right off the bat in the Bible study was Luke 5:16, and it says, "He often withdrew to deserted places and prayed." And it sparked the idea in me of clarification often requires removal. So I've been pondering it, and so we're going to talk about it today. But first, I want to remind you guys where you can find the podcast and also where you can find me. So Gather with Purpose podcast is on YouTube. It has its own channel there, and it's also on Rumble. I am working on getting it on the podcast app through Apple, so hopefully it will be there shortly. You can also find it on my website, CourtneyNAdams.com. You can sign up for that for free. I don't spam. In fact, I really don't send out a whole lot with it. I simply just share the site, and if you're interested in it, you can go and sign up for it and check in there. You can also find me with Mary and Martha. It is a national direct sales company. I've been with them for a little over a year. This is year 9 for me in direct sales, and I'm a national leader with them. So mymaryandmartha.com/CAdams is where you can find my site, and you can peek around and see what Mary and Martha is all about. So in a world driven by culture, let's gather with purpose and focus on that which matters most. Join me each week for What's New, a different perspective, encouraging outreach, and what's real. This is not your everyday podcast. I will promise you this. I will show up to challenge you, encourage you, hopefully help you grow and break free of culture. So let's gather with purpose. So today the idea is clarification often requires removal. And that's probably something a lot of us have never really taken the time to think about what that looks like, what that could possibly mean, or how that really could be helpful for us in a lot of situations. So I'm just going to throw out some verses that you guys can look up after. I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to give you the verses, and you can go and check them out on your own time. So Matthew 14:13, Matthew 14:23, Mark 6:31, Mark 1:35, Luke 22:41, and John 6:15. So these all have to do with removing one's self from the situation to essentially get clarity, whether it be through prayer or quiet or being alone, whatever the case may be. Okay, so those are Matthew 14:13, Matthew 14:23, Mark 6:31, Mark 1:35, Luke 22:41, and John 6:15. And the verse I read in the beginning is Luke 5:16. He often withdrew to deserted places and prayed. And that one is specifically talking about Jesus withdrawing up to the mountains and praying. So I want to ask you this simple question. How often do we go through things in life and we then remove ourselves from that situation to gain clarity? So whether it's a situation that brings great praise or happiness or gratitude, or maybe it's a really contentious situation, or it's a situation that has some negativity surrounding it or some really hard things to process. Whatever the case may be, when you go through anything in life that is outside of your everyday, that requires extra thought or processing or emotional energy or decision making, how often do you remove yourself from that situation so that you can gain clarity? I want you to think about that question as we chat today. And I would love to know your feedback on this and just get your perspective on the idea of clarification often requires removal. So some of you guys know my story of growing up and my childhood and how it was just a really terrible situation. It had all kinds of abuse except for sexual, and as a child and a teenager and an early 20s, when situations like that involve those that you eminently trust, such as a parent figure, it's hard to remove yourself from that situation so that you can gain clarity of, say, that 40,000 view, right? Because that's your parent. And as a child and a teen and an early 20-something still in college, you are still dependent upon them. And so the situation only grows in emotional tenseness and contention and negativity. It's just like fuel to the fire. The fire never has the opportunity to die out because nobody removes themselves from the situation to gain clarity. Right? So it's just going to keep growing and it's going to stay there. But when you're older and you can remove yourself from a situation and you can look at it from a 40,000 viewpoint and see what needs to be done to fix it or walk away from it or really get a good sense of what's going on there, you're able to do that. So in this past year, I have really been focusing on the idea of refining things in my life. And I think this is a big part of that. When things happen in our lives that require extra energy or create turmoil or engage our emotions in a stronger sense, we normally just dive in deep to it. We don't remove ourselves to get that clarity that's needed to really see what has to happen for the best outcome to be our end result. Well, refining the way you handle situations and refining the way you look at things really helps you see that the best option for any situation, whether good, bad, ugly, happy, tumultuous, contentious, exciting, everything you've prayed for, whatever the case may be, removing yourself from that situation for just a little bit to process, to pray on, to go to people with good, godly advice and direction in your life can really help you gain clarity on it. So I'm going to just share a little bit about something that really helped me see that this is exactly what needs to happen in all situations that we go through in life. A couple months ago, something happened and it involved somebody close to our family. And it wasn't anything productive, and it was very reminiscent of some things that I went through as a child, and as a mother, I swore I would never allow to have happen to my children. In fact, I have cut off the people in my life that could potentially do to my children what they did to me. And so this event happened, and it was really kind of shocking and surprising, and nobody saw it coming. And so we spent some good time processing. And I spent a couple weeks in this event. And it wasn't until I removed myself from the event and the people around it that I could finally gain clarity on what needed to happen for myself, my children, my family, and my current circle. It also really helped me gain clarity on how to pray for the people involved in this situation and the people that were affected by it and the people that have continued to stay in the situation that I know is being furthered in their own lives. I'm human. I can only do so much, and I cannot motivate somebody to change who they are. Change within a person is 100% internal. It is intrinsic. And nothing that happens externally can motivate a person to change for good. It has to be intrinsic. And that was one of the things that I gained clarity on. This person that was involved in this event has no desire to change and will not change. And so knowing that helps me to proceed forward with how I respond, how I pray, and how I handle this situation, and how I help my children process and handle the situation that they encountered. More often than not, we stay in a situation that arouses our emotions to a point that requires extra processing and hashing out and asking for advice and opinions and direction and guidance and prayer. When really, if we were to take ourselves out of the situation, we can gain that 40,000 view to see exactly what needs to happen to help us process it better, sometimes even quicker, and also can help us see that bigger picture of what's going on. And sometimes that involves us leaving the situation and walking away from it and just giving it all to God and praying through it. Sometimes it helps us see exactly which path and which road we need to take to help finalize that situation and those emotions. And we can be guided down the right way to do it. If we're staying in a situation in hopes of working it out, figuring it out, and hopefully gaining clarity, more likely than not, we are not. It's just going to keep our emotions revved up. Our adrenaline is going to constantly stay in that fight or flight mode. And we are going to have a really hard time processing what actually happened because we are constantly bombarding our emotions of replay of the event, of talking about it, of bringing it up, of trying to fix it, when really we can't. We're human. Whatever happened has happened. Whatever has been presented to us has been presented to us. And if it involves something really powerful and amazing and great, we need to spend time to process out what that's going to look like for us personally and communally with those around us. Same thing if something has happened that is really contentious and negative and hard to process, and maybe it brings up things that we've already gone through, and it's just not a good end to that situation for you personally. You should never apologize for removing yourself from a situation to gain clarity on it. Staying in that situation is never going to bring clarity to it, and you are going to constantly feel the need to apologize for what's going on and how you're processing and what your emotions look like in response to it. You're going to make that situation more than what it is, more times than not. But when you remove yourself, you can see it exactly for what it is, no matter what anybody is telling you, what anybody is trying to feed you, no matter how many lies are tried to being spun or whatever. Emotions cloud our ability to process. Whether they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. Emotions totally take over, and they make us incredibly impulsive when it comes to responding. I mean, you can just look at social media threads for that. You can see people commenting left and right and just responding right off the bat without really thinking about what they want to say, how they want to say it, or why they want to say it, or if it's even going to be productive for them to say it. And I've been guilty of this. Every single one of us has been guilty of this. But if we cannot remove ourselves from any kind of situation, we are constantly going to allow our emotions to control who we are, how we see things, how we respond, who we allow in our lives. we're going to allow the world to guide us into every bit of our lives, when really we should be looking to the things above, not to the things of this world. The things of this world will never bring us satisfaction and joy and happiness. But just like with Jesus, he walked away from the world to go and pray and be by himself and to just be. He gained great clarity from doing that. He removed himself from that current situation that was 100% of this world, and he prayed. And he was still, and he was quiet, and he was alone. And he allowed himself the gift of removal so that he could process and gain clarity. So, how many times and how often, or have you ever removed yourself from a situation, no matter what type of adjective you want to put with that situation, to then process that situation, to then give yourself the gift of clarity? I feel confident that we don't do this enough in our lives, and that a lot of arguments, a lot of broken relationships, a lot of issues, a lot of forks in the road, a lot of dead ends could be avoided if we allowed ourselves the gift of removal from this world to then give us the gift of processing that which is above, to then gain clarity with the guidance of above on the things of this world. Clarity often requires removal. We are not made to process every single thing that happens on this earth all by ourselves. We just aren't. We are going to fail every time as humans. It's just the way it goes. We are imperfect, and we are selfish, and we do not think clear when those emotions get to flowing. So if you are currently in a situation and your emotions are flowing and they are ramped up and you don't know what to do and you feel really confused and like you can't get out of it, may I suggest that you remove yourself from that situation and think about it and pray about it and be still on it and process it however you need to. There's so many different ways that you can process out situations. You can journal, you can talk with one close friend about it, you can pray, you can exercise, go for a walk, get outside, turn off social media, turn off your phone, read, rest, binge watch your favorite episode to take your mind off of it. Sometimes that's the best thing we can do, is just distracting ourselves to not think about it for a little bit so that our brains can kind of have a reset. When we focus on something all the time, all day long, nonstop without rest, it really gets us going. I mean, we can see that with 2020. People were inundated with COVID this, COVID that, COVID death this, so on and so forth. There was a ramped up program to create and instill fear in us for the everyday. And it was hard to remove ourselves from that situation so that we could gain clarity on what needed to be seen, what was real, what was the truth, what were the facts, who was actually involved, who was not involved, what we needed to do for ourselves, not what we were told to do. We had a hard time doing that because we were inundated. We did not have the opportunity to step away and to remove ourselves from the situation to gain clarity on what was really going on. And you guys, that happens in our everyday. You can probably think about a situation right now that's not politically charged, but that is just going on in your personal life and you don't know what to do about it. You don't have the answers for it. And you're processing, but you don't feel like it's getting anywhere. I'm going to suggest that you remove yourself from that situation so that you can process it and gain clarity, whatever that looks like. And sometimes we don't like the clarity we get. And sometimes we really are thankful for that clarity that we got, and we can then see the clear path. But that's not the point of it. It's not for us to like or not like. There are lots of things that are going to happen in our lives that we don't like, and we can choose to stew and dwell on them and be a victim about them, or we can choose to see them as growing and learning opportunities to become better people from them. And we can look back on that as an opportunity that refined us and that grew us into a better person, into a more accurate person of who God wants us to be. So you have choices. And I'm going to tell you that sinking in to a current situation in hopes of really figuring out the truth of that situation or figuring out what needs to be done with that situation is not going to bring you clarity quicker. It's not going to get you to the end result quicker. In fact, it's going to be like quicksand. It's going to slowly sink you into it and pull you into it until you feel like you cannot get out of it. And that is not a good feeling for anybody. So I want to encourage you to walk away from whatever it is that you are currently hashing out, whatever that has your emotions charged more so than normal. I want you to walk away from that situation. Journal, get outside in nature, try and distract yourself from it for a little bit. It's okay to avoid something for a little bit of time so that you can come back with a clear head and a fresh perspective. And I want you to really figure out from that 40,000 viewpoint what that situation can look like with clarity and where you need to go with it and what you need to do about it. So I hope that this has encouraged you today. I've been thinking about this one for a couple weeks now, and I think it's a probably pretty heavy topic in some sense, but I hope that you were able to dig in, that you filled yourself up with it, and you're ready to get going on maybe figuring out how you can remove yourself from whatever it is that is charging your emotions. Nothing gets done sitting around waiting for others to do it. So let's be the ones that do it. Get it done and do so boldly and authentically. The world needs more of that. Swim upstream in a waterfall culture. Again, to find us, you can find us on YouTube with Gather with Purpose Podcast. Also Rumble, same thing, Gather with Purpose Podcast channel. On my website, CourtneyandAdams.com. And Mary and Martha is mymaryandmartha.com/C Adams. We are a direct sales company. We are under Dayspring, which a lot of y'all probably know about. And I would love to connect with you there as well if you've never heard of them. Thank you so much for listening today. I would love it if you would share with somebody. I'd love your feedback on this one. And stay tuned for the next episode. I am actually going to start a 4-part series on motherhood. I have had some requests for motherhood. So we're going to talk about motherhood for the next 4 episodes after this. So tune in and share with your mom friends and have a wonderful day.